Yo, what's up guys? So today we are gonna see, what if Hanabi was Naruto's girlfriend, movie. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic MRAY4TW, link is in the description, and also subscribe to my channel, and like this video. Let's begin the video. Carrion birds flew through the air above, crowing their haunting cry. Soon, they would feast on all of his deceased loved ones, those he had fought alongside with, ate and drank with, celebrated with. With all of his might, he was powerless to even stop these disgusting creatures from desecrating their corpses with their morbid profanity. He was all alone in his fight, not by abandonment, only by choice. And the man responsible for all of that was trying to convert him to his twisted idea of true peace. This man, responsible for so much suffering trying to teach him about peace, he couldn't stand hypocrites. They lied to themselves. All of that changed in an instant. I was always chasing you, wanting to overtake you. I just wanted to walk with you. I wanted to be with you. You changed me. Your smile saved me. So I'm not afraid to die protecting you. Because I love you. All he could do was listen to her moving confession, now realizing the truth with frightening clarity. The girl put up a gallant fight to save her beloved, but she was far outclassed. Oceans of skill, experience and power only widened the gap between herself and her foe. In the end, the man used one of his most powerful techniques to try to destroy the girl's will to fight, but she refused to give up. In the end, she lost. The man struck her down, right in front of him. It drove him over the edge, and he gave in to the powerful hate that threatened to swallow him in the dark abyss. Naruto's eyes snapped open, breathing deeply. His eyes scanned the room quickly with the skill bred from years of experience from his practice. He realized that it was another nightmare, another account of what had happened on that fateful day. His internal clock told him that it was around 5 a.m., so he quickly finished rousing himself awake and gathered his bearings. The young man went into his bathroom and took a long shower, trying to forget the life-changing event. It did little to wash away his emotional pain. He sighed and turned the knob, killing the flow of water to the shower head. He put on his mesh armor and drew on his clothes, a now predominantly black clothes-fitting shirt and ankle-length pants with some orange streaks. Finally, he turned to the hanger on which his prized sage cloak hung. A small tear swelled up, and he choked back a small sob as he remembered the giver, Jiraiya, who had passed on. It was all he really had to remember him by in the way of worldly possessions. He made sure to wear it as often as possible as a way to honor him by. He put it on a bit reverently, the flames of the coat lapping at the bottom, giving the young man an imposing figure, and left his house, closing the door behind him. He bounded across the rooftops to make his daily ritualistic visit to the memorial stone. As he made his way there, he tried to appreciate the peace and quiet that the village exuded. Only in times of peace the village truly felt happiness, but ninja life was short-lived. Ninja went on missions, sometimes missions went against other ninjas' missions. They don't just shake hands and agree to let one mission go through. They fight to the death, with all that they have, with all that they are, to the death. Even if they have to break out their own teeth because it handicapped the chances of mission success, they would. Such was the life of a ninja, to kill for a living. Thus there will never be true peace, so long as ninja existed, fights fought, wars waged, sinners sinning and killers killing. So why should he believe that as a ninja, he would be any different? All happiness was a lie. Finally reaching his destination, he stopped in front of the memorial stone and scanned the names. Kurenai Yuhi, Asuma Saratobi, Shizune Kato, Kakashi Haddock, Niji Hyuga, Ino Yamanaka, Rock Lee, Sakura Haruno, Shino Aburum, Tsunade Senju, Iruka Yamino. Hinata Hyuga. It took all of his willpower to not let the tears spill from his eyes. After going ballistic on pain in a six-tailed shroud, even going to the lengths of killing Nagato and destroying his eyes in the process. Naruto even went as far as to try to assimilate some of his DNA to acquire his own Rinnegan, hoping that he'd be able to use the Rinnegan's abilities of reviving people, as he had observed in the recurring paths from his fight, but all he learned was the Diva Path's abilities over gravity. He fought his own crusade against the powers that be, killed the instigators of Fourth Great Ninja War, and the world was at peace. But he was all alone. So many of the people precious to him had died. They had perished along the way. Kurenai died on a solo mission. Asuma fell to the missing nin, hiding. Shizune died in Pain's invasion. Niji, Lee, Shino and Iruka died in the war. Ino went too deep in an undercover mission and had gotten raped and decapitated to send a threatening message. Tsunade passed only as natural causes, she went peacefully in her sleep. No doubt her lifespan was significantly shortened due to her excessive use of her methodic regeneration technique, dying at the age of 60. But Hinata, when she died to Pain, he sobbed over her cold body, trying in vain to resuscitate her. He lashed out at everyone who tried to approach them, anyone who persisted was threatened with a Rasengan. He stayed there beside her for 6 hours, finally falling asleep due to his earlier exertions to fight Pain, and using the Kyuubi's chakra. When he woke up 48 hours later, he refused nourishment of all kinds. After a week of total emaciation, he was overpowered when he was weakened and placed in a coma to keep him alive via drips and tubes. Essentially, he continued fighting over the years, not because he wanted to or supposed to. It was because Hinata's last words would forever haunt him, her adopting him. She loves him, pining away for him, and paying the ultimate price for it. Hey, guys. Hey, Hinata-chan. I'm back. Life in the village has been progressing as usual. Hyuga compound. The Hyuga heiress woke up in a start, gasping for breath. Her long-forged habit of 6 a.m. rising had broken through her deep sleep, making her disoriented. It was a perfect time to rise, her own personal hard-to-break tradition. She got out of her queen-sized bed and made her way to the mirror, observing her reflection. A disheveled-looking girl stared back at her, making her frown. She went into her bathroom and made amends by taking a rather brisk shower, and attended to her other hygienic needs, as well as drawing on her outfit. Making her way back to the mirror, she nodded in satisfaction, seeing the palpable change in appearance. Hanabi Hyuga left her room to get her breakfast and start her day as a Hyuga Kunoichi. The Hokage's office. The young man sat in the office, sorting out the daily paperwork, sifting the missions that would be allotted to the different shinobi that came in daily. He reserved the D ranks for the fresh genin, C ranks for veteran genin, B ranks for, A ranks for all types, but of the fewest ranked ones, there were only 2 people in the whole village who could receive those. Madoka-ai and Naruto Uzunamikas. 1. He could not help but worry. Ever since Hinata passed away, the double clan had simply closed up. He was like a blank book. You could see everything he had to show you, but there really wasn't anything there. It just got worse as his friends started dying off, one by one. Only a few remained from his generation, like Tenten, Shikamaru, Choji and Kiba. He could talk to them, but they felt more like ordinary pleasantries rather than friendly conversations. He was reclusive to them, not even bothering to put on a facade for them. The only person that he spoke to was himself and the graves of those who had died, and he couldn't help but wonder if it was because of their childhood ties. The young man couldn't follow through to protect his precious people, becoming morose and taciturn. That was how one death led to all of this mess. Suddenly, a yellow flash lit the room, announcing the ninja's arrival. Naruto appeared, sage cloak and all, said blonde with a smirk on his face. Yo, Konohamaru. What do you have for me today, huh? Konohamaru Sarutobi smiled. I don't have anything about your speed today, Naruto. Unless you want to do a B rank or C rank. What? Can't you just send me an A rank or something? Even if I have to work with other people. He mumbled the last. Omen, Naruto. In the future, you're going to have to pre-handpick your missions before time if you want to get them. What? Naruto was incredulous. Like a hotel reservation or something. Sarutobi only nodded in his reply. So for some ninja, you get to select from ahead of time which mission you want to go on. Which poison do you want to drink? That's an interesting way of putting it. But yes. That seems to be true in rare cases, if you want to get technical. Anyway, how's the hat treating you? I'm fine. But with this steep paperwork, I understand a bit what kind of beginnings my grandfather had when he first took the office, around 60 years ago. He must have been encouraging us to become Hokage so he could get to his retirement, you know. Naruto stared at Konohamaru stupidly. At first, the young Sarutobi Kage thought his joke didn't come off, but soon, Naruto grinned before laughing amiably. True. But Konohamaru. Don't go in those kinds of waters again. I don't like being reminded about those times, you know. Makes me feel like the best times of my life are gone, and I have nothing left to look forward to. Damn. Now I've gone and made the mood depressing. It's not your fault. Now, as I was saying before, I don't have any solo missions for you right now, but we do have a few missions that are short a few people. Like reconnaissance, escorting, assassinations. A sharp rap came at the door, interrupting the leaf shadow. You may enter, he called. The door was pushed inwards to reveal a strikingly attractive young Hyuga woman who made her way to the Hokage's desk, and stood with her feet together, as if at attention. Good morning, Hokage-sama. Hanabi, please. We're the same age. It still feels awkward when you use that honorific. Hanabi did not show any changes in her countenance. The honorific comes with the office and status. May I have my mission please? Konohamaru quickly spawned a shadow clone who went over to the mission distribution area, as he liked to call it, and started leafing through the papers that bore the missions and their details. Ah, here it is. The clone exclaimed. You are supposed to do some espionage work out in Lightning Country. There's this castle that is occupied by a rogue party. All you're commissioned to do is to find out their strengths, weaknesses, motivation, purposes and such. The Hyuga frowned. Lightning Country. Hi. I wonder if she's worried about Kumo. Her fears would be entirely justified, considering that her sister was once kidnapped by them for the Byakugan. Sarutobi momentarily lost himself in thought. We're in the land of lightning. The castle is on a cliff overlooking a large lake, which is about 16 or 17 miles from the hidden cloud. Naruto spoke for the first time. Do you think this is a trap? It's likely, Hanabi responded, now regarding the young man for the first time. Why would her sister die to protect this man, aside from the fact that he was powerful and loyal? Even if it is, you still have to go. Whether it is a trap or not, if we don't fulfill a mission, we'll lose face with our clients and lose future ones because of a fall in reputation, fearing mission outcomes. We've got to keep up a good image. Does it have to be a Hyuga scout? A main branch one at that? She asked in a half-flat, half-worried tone. She was not going to go if it could be helped. Unfortunately, no. From what I've been able to learn, the castle has special properties that cannot be breached because of a large amount of blood sealing techniques, so the Hyuga will have to be the one that has to see through it. Can't another Hyuga go? Perhaps one of those from the cadet branch. I cannot. Everyone has been running their own gauntlet of missions, so unless they want to go instead of you, you're on your own. Besides, the cadet branch can only see through objects within 100 yards in normal vision beyond that. The castle is very large, with at least twice that metric distance from the closest boundary to its center. The only exception to the inferior side branch version was Niji, and he died in the war. The girl finished. Naruto's visage immediately became crestfallen as he remembered the youth. He really became a good confidant when he returned back to the village with Jiraiya, and he died also. It was like a horrible chain reaction that kept progressing as he recalled who had deceased in earlier years. If you're that worried, let Naruto go with you. He's complaining about not having anything to do. What? What? Both young people's eyes snapped to each other for a quick moment before looking back at the cage. She chuckled, noting their reactions. Unnecessary. Pass. So you want to go on your own then, I take it. Hanabi hesitated. He was reputedly the strongest person in the village who was willing to accompany her on her mission that was highly probable to go horribly wrong. He was merely putting on a show to make it look as if he wasn't desperate for a little excitement, if nothing to occupy his time. But on the other hand, she had some mixed feelings about him, and she could do without the awkwardness that came with his baggage of poor personal history. What to do? I approve of the arrangement. If Naruto-sen so chooses, he may accompany me on my mission. Excellent. X equals X equals. The two walked along the pathway leading to the direction of Kumo. The duo was silent, each thinking of the other, and keeping a vigil for any threats in their surroundings. Hanabi. She looked at him. Hi. Family doing well? What do you care about? She glowered at him. My sister died because you and cousin Niji died in the war by your side. It's not my fault. But he really felt as though it were his fault for not being strong enough to stop Pain Nagato from killing Hinata, or from stopping Madara and Tobi from killing Niji in the war. Even though he was now the strongest person in the elemental nations, he still felt so weak when he thought of the people he outlived. Oh really? She replied to the question sarcastically. Even if it weren't, they're gone and I didn't even get some closure. A tear came to her eye, but she quickly swiped it away before he could see. He did notice the action, but he chose to ignore it. Obviously she didn't want him to see her weakness. They had to put up with me and my behavior towards them, and now they'll never get to know that I'm apologetic. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, I know the feeling. If there's anything I can do to help. Bring them back to life. She interrupted shortly. Within reason, he finished. Unless you want me to use the impure resurrection technique, kill 2 more people for the sacrifices, and get 2 hollow and empty versions of their past selves, then no. I can't do that. However, the person who he looked at was Hanabi. Invading Konoha could revive his dead past. I am looking into that avenue, of course. But I found out that he spent 30 years of his life developing his powers, and they only came to be because of a cataclysmic event of emotional loss. Then how come it didn't happen when Nichan died? I didn't have them then, and I probably won't unlock any more of its secrets because I don't have anyone that close to me anymore. Oh? They raised an eyebrow. It's true. Naruto sighed. Guess that's how sad my life is, ha, he resigned with a shrug. The girl thought for a moment. She had a large family to keep her company, even though she didn't really appreciate them. For lack of someone to name close to her, she had her father, Hiashi. But Naruto had no one, and by the looks of things he did sound like a lonely character. Indeed, she said with a smirk, knowing she had something that he did not. Naruto did not respond with words. Rather, the dive tackled her to the far side, turning on midair, so that she landed mostly on him, while he landed with full brunt force on the ground. He didn't mind doing that, but she hotly blushed as he was spooning her, not to mention she could nearly hear his developed lean muscles creak. A half-second later, sallied through the space where she previously occupied, enough to coat them like porcupines if they hadn't dodged it. What are you doing? She asked a question with an obvious answer. She thought she was getting him to open up a little, and he tackled her. Couldn't he have just told her to dodge? Saving your life. He looked around in the surrounding areas briefly before shutting his eyes closed momentarily. And opening them, revealing the Rinnegan. Anshoten in heavenly attraction of all things. He pointed his hand at a bush with the palm facing outwards. Suddenly a missing nin with a slash to Wagakure hit I-8 came out of it, chest outwards, indicating that he was being pulled against his will. Halfway towards Naruto, the kunai flew out of his storage seal in his palm, hitting the ninja in the chest, and passing clean through to the other side. The kunai was imbued with wind chakra, and subsequently, the man had a hole in his chest where his heart was located. Or rather, where it used to be properly. The man passed on into death effortlessly, while Hanabi watched, a bit in shock. Her companion disposed of the man so effortlessly and so callous it was scary. Naruto created a shadow clone. Remove his head, burn the body and collect the bounty. Then forward the proceeds to an orphanage. He ordered simply. He walked over to Hanabi, who had yet to get back up. He held out his hand, which she grasped and pulled herself up. He then started to walk away, beckoning her to follow. She looked to him, then to the clone who had started channeling wind chakra to a kunai to ready a soon beheading, then to Naruto before she made up her mind. She followed him, and apparently tried to look a bit more serious, like he did. Arigato, for saving me. She thanked me after a long while. It was out of her nature too, but recently, she had been trying to change her stokeway and certain Hyuga habits of self-righteousness. Actually, I'm sorry. He was out for my head and you were here as some sort of interference. This happened often. At least once on every escapade out of the village. So as we were saying before, you were agreeing that my life was sad, and you did it with a smug expression. She blinked. He just tried to get back to a superfluous conversation after killing a man in 3 seconds flat, as if it were normal behavior. Which it was. At least for him, anyway. Hi. If we were not interrupted, I would have said that your life was somewhat sad, too. Excuse me. Of course it is. You get everything you want, especially from being weighted on hand and foot as it makes you lax, complacent. You nearly died back there, if you didn't know. You took responsibility for that mishap. Yes, I did. And it wouldn't have changed a thing if you really did bite the dust. Hanabi frowned. That's true. So in that case, he continued. How do you feel about your family? What do you mean? About the 2 branches. What's he playing at? I don't like it. I abhor the seal. Every day I see it, I think about Hinata's life goal of changing the clan's ideals. If Hinata-nichan hadn't died, I would have gotten the seal, most likely since I was the second born. There would have been no contest. They were practically instilling in me a braggart nature and tendencies to make my sister more firm and confident in herself, fooling me to think that I would have had a chance. I was actually scheduled to be sealed at a certain date, but pain invaded the week before. In that scenario, Nichan freed me by dying. I also thought the same thing. So in a way, I would try and make it up to you by helping your clan with that problem. With what problem? The heiress yelled the question. The seal. Would you abolish it? I can do better than that. I can give you the counter seals matrix to remove it. Why would you do this? Your sister is the reason. Hinata-ni. Why? She asked, dumbfounded. Hi. She did mention about trying to change the clan several times. If it was one thing I could make it up to her, I had been working tirelessly to make my way to being a sealing master by spamming clones to learn. It still took me 7 years. You dedicated 7 years of your life just to help the clan. No, to help Hinata, especially in her memory. Well, I may not have loved her like she did me, I owe her that much, even to the fact that she died trying to save me. So you like me then? She gave a coy smile. Naruto sputtered. I don't know what you're talking about. What's there not to like? So I'm not pretty like her, that's why. She frowned. It's not that, you're pretty and all that, determined, self-esteemed, to be sure, he trailed off. And? She waited expectantly. I just met you. He said in deadpan, finally regaining his composure. Hanabi's sweat dropped. Of course. Let us be on our way then, Hanabi. Let's. The 2 Konohinin made it into Lightning Country in good time, traveling and conversing with each other. They found out more about each other than they had cared about in the past, each discovering that the other was interesting and a delightful change of pace. Naruto, for instance, did not know that her favorite foods were bananas and milk. Hanabi on the other hand did not know that the sage enjoyed gardening. Interesting indeed. They were actually even smiling with one another. That would make anyone who knew the two have their jaws drop off of their heads. And then what happened? He was about to slash me with his claws, and then I farted in his face. Hanabi stopped walking and stared at him, unbelieving. Really? Really happened. And that's how I gained control in the match and beat Kiba with my own version of Sasuke's version of Lee's primary lotus. Aha. You beat Kiba with the fart and a Taijutsu style you stole from Sasuke that he stole from Lee. Yeah. He was now walking ahead of her, and she jogged a little to catch up to him. Your generation was eccentric, Naruto, she remarked, if not unique. I mean that in the nicest way. It feels a bit insulting when you say eccentric, even though the Konoha 12 weren't exactly run-of-the-mill. It was composed of clan heirs, melee experts, last existing clan members like myself and Sasuke. His expression soured. Uchiha. What happened to him, anyway? The last I heard of him was when he killed Danzo. He died as well. If Danzo was strong enough to be nominated for the position, which means that he was strong. If Sasuke killed him, how could Sasuke die? Wouldn't that mean he was powerful as well? He killed Sakura Haruno, my other teammate. I saw him cut her throat. I was too late to intervene and I killed him in reprisal. Hanabi frowned. But I heard from Hinata-ni once that you promised Sakura to bring him back to the village. When Sakura was killed, there was nothing and no one holding me to her promise anymore. We have arrived, he said shortly, cutting the conversation suddenly. Obviously he didn't feel comfortable talking about this topic. Hanabi looked thoughtful. While her life was nowhere near tragic as his, considering that he held her family dear to him as well, he seemed to hold up under the pressure well, or at least, pretended to. She was sure she would have gone mad years ago. She looked up to the castle, seeing its imposing figure cast its shadow over them by blocking the afternoon sun. There really was something strange about it, but nothing over the top. Just a building of fortitude. Nothing more, nothing less. She looked to her side. What do you think? Naruto was gone. All that was in his place was a small piece of paper that read, ND. She frowned. The message held no deciphered meaning to her, so she decided to just do her job and look over the castle with her dot. She did and activated her dot, being provided by 360-degree vision. Via all-seeing eyes she regarded the paper again, now seeing letters on the back of it. She picked it up and turned it over. Naru. She held it back up on the right side with the original version, and looked it over with the dot by seeing through the paper as well. The message became clear. Looking around, she felt the need to suppress an impressed smile. Thinking on the fly for him must have been natural intuition. But she still could not see him, even with her on. She shrugged and looked into the castle once more, and saw a large man seated inside an observation room of sorts that overlooked her location. She noticed one thing that stood out the most about the man. He had very large cage-level chakra reserves. For a single man like that to be in that location and had such immense reserves meant that this was obviously a trap. It was supposed to be ordinary rogues. The man jumped out of the window on the 8th story and landed with a crash on the ground below, raising dust. As soon as it cleared, Hanabi's heart fell when she saw who stood in the crater. It was the 4th wreckage of Kumagakure. Hello, Hanabi. Please come with me. He held out his hand, as if expecting her to oblige to his inane request. Her only response was to settle into her gentle fist stance, complemented with a stoic expression. And why the hell would I do that? It was oozing confidence. She knew that she did not have the skill set necessary to even fight one of his elite, close-range weakness, let alone on his level. She knew that if she even wanted a chance to live, she would have to surrender. Yes. After all the years, Kumo would finally have the to add to their vast collection of keke, increasing their military prowess. There was no doubt. She knew this. As far as he knew, she was alone, and if she disappeared, no one in the Leaf would be any the wiser. Sure, they could blame the hidden cloud, but they could just deny the accusations. Even if they had proof that the Reikich himself kidnapped her, the Leaf would try to ignore the problem to save face, as well as to keep the peace. Tree huggers. Always preached on and on about peace. He thought. Well. She ran towards him, a blaze in chakra visible at her fingertips. 8 trigrams. 64 palms. She started to jab at his points, but he danced fluidly in and out of her attacks. Every time she jabbed, it was almost as if trying to hit his afterimage. This performance is pathetic. Although I can tell from your speed that this style has too many flaws in it. He mocked. But I can be fair. I'll let myself take the attacks and you can see what you think. She was more than willing to take him on in his self-handicap experiment. She repeated her attacks at his points. 2 palms, 4 palms, 8 palms, 16 palms, 64 palms. Her hands became like blurs, moving so fast it made her seem as if she had more than just 2 of them. Upon completing the technique, however, instead of toppling over unconscious and/or in severe pain, she wasn't really surprised. It was still a pipe dream. He just stood there and laughed, his mirth sounding like a death sentence. Gentle fist. Aptly named, for being so gentle. Each time you were about to hit me, I channeled more chakra into that particular point and strengthened it, making your attacks into nothing more than what they are. Just tap on me. She scowled before settling into a modified version of the original stance. 8 trigrams. 64 chakra daggers. She resumed doing the attack, but instead her chakra flew out of her fingers as solid manifestations with pointed tips, created to perform using piercing damage. I smirked, seeing how the attack would incapacitate him, and disappeared in a fading action, indicating that she was fighting another afterimage. The heiress could not help but respect the man's speed, able to run so fast that it left those images. She also loathed it. It mocked her, making her look foolish. It finally stopped moving, all of his afterimages catching to him, making it appear as if merging was taking place. Hyuga-san, I have to say, this performance, while commendable by your clan's standards, is pitiful by Kumo's. Why waste your talent in that kami-forsaken place? You could do so much better than there. Just think of the pros. You could start a new Hyuga clan. No? That's a huge con. I would be betraying my village. My clan. Even more so, how would I start a clan? Having a different man each year to have my body for his own sexual enjoyment. She yelled the question. I wouldn't do that. We are more civilized than that. We're not animals. I would make sure that you got a husband who would cherish you and perish to save you, one who you would grow to love. You could even court the one whom you take a fancy to. No? The Raikage's expression fell. He tried toying with her, reasoning with her, but nothing was working. Time to go with the failsafe. Hanabi watched the man who was apparently staring off into space, undoubtedly thinking. As she carefully watched him, trying to not get too comfortable, the cage was strictly on defense. She thought as to why Naruto was yet to show up. Where the hell was he? He'd better. Her eyes widened. The Raikage started to fade again, and she felt a sharp cuff at the back of her head, darkness claiming her suddenly. The Raikage caught the unconscious girl as she fell sideways, right into a bridal carry. The large dark-skinned man smirked. Why the hell did he have to take the long way anyway? This was so much easier. He was about to call forth his chakra when he saw a small bird circle above him. He wasn't going to pay too much mind to it, but it kept circling above him, getting larger the more it did so. The bird was coming down in a downward spiral. A frown. As it came close enough for him to see its plumage, he noticed that it was a messenger bird with a note strapped around its left foot. It finally perched on his shoulder and he let it be, sensing no malicious intent from it or any chakra levels. He adjusted the girl onto his other shoulder with one hand, and removed the message from the bird with the other, in a feat of dexterity, and read the message. He scowled, and read it over again twice before burning it with a very low-grade fire dot. He then made his trek to Kumo with his prize over his shoulder, supporting her weight by resting his hand on her lower back. He had some honor by not resting his hand on her bottom instead. As he left, if one were to look at the burning note, one would see a very short, profound yet somewhat eerie message, just before the flames of the edges consumed it. For the good of Kumo, leave her alone. Then the fire did what it was made to do. Kumo, Raikage's office. The Raikage was drinking some of his prized sake, one that he reserved for the most joyous occasions. At long last, they had finally captured a Hyuga, and a main branch member to boot. After so long, they had the reverence of the clan, and the bearer of it was stretched out on a sofa in the office. She had a chakra suppressant seal on her person, and she was under the effects of a fairly weak sedative. While it couldn't make her fall asleep like a normal strength one, she was as docile as a newborn lamb. Out of touch with what was going on, not even able to comprehend what might and would soon happen to her. He was being kept company by his elite sea and dairy. The group was drinking their own sake at the same time from their own personal cups, the special ones reserved for celebrations like this. Ah, to each his own. To Kumo. It cheered and they all drank again, long and deep. So what are going to do with her, boss? Derry drew out. What, see something you like? I ripped him with his elbow, nearly making his right-hand man spill his beverage. No, not that. What do you mean? I mean look at that. She's quite the looker, and she makes her look exotic. C exclaimed. I mean to ask if she came peacefully. She's sleeping on the couch, isn't she? No, she isn't. I said. She's just a bit out of it. She's awake but she can't follow what we're saying. You drugged her? Duri raised an eyebrow. Not really. In a way. I just gave her a little something to help her relax. Alright. So C. Hi. Why don't you marry her, since you like her so much? C stumbled over his words a little. Who, me? Yes, you. You're the only person who I know named CA said. Why would you choose me? He asked in bewilderment. Well, she needs a strong husband, and you're strong. Derry finished. Besides, she just came and you're already infatuated with her. You're a sucker for her good looks. A slapped C's shoulder in his praise, almost knocking the shinobi over. He was used to it. I'm not disagreeing, so he trailed off. X 24 hours later. Hanabi wept inwardly. It was somewhat obvious to those who looked on, seeing her disheveled appearance. All in a matter of hours, she got married to a man of her nightmares. She heard him say he only liked her looks while she was under sedation, had a small reception, and was off to live with him in his rather large house that was sponsored by the Raikage. She could sense that it was all done in an effort to convert her to their side willingly, seeing as how they knew that she came from a highly privileged family. It would have been hard to impress her. The only thing impressing her was the fact that they would go to such lengths for the Byakugan Jujutsu. She would not let them see tears, that would be showing weakness. But even so, where the hell was Naruto? She was now in her bedroom sitting down on the bed, bracing her upper torso on her knees with her hands, contemplating her capture. C would probably soon come and subdue her, having his way with her. They had already injected some sort of serum into her arm. She was suspicious as to what it was, but she had a vague idea as to what it was. When the nurse had injected her, she had whispered to the Raikage that she would be pushing out babies in no time. She assumed that it was to increase fertility, but now, she was also suspecting an aphrodisiac as well, albeit a minor one. Perhaps to make her feel as if she wanted to have sex with a man she only knew the first name of. She had a chakra suppressant seal on her, making her as weak as a civilian. In the face of an elite, she would be nothing more than prey. She sighed in resignation and slipped on her shoes. She frowned her eyebrows when she felt something within the right foot and took it off. She then held it upside down and shook it, revealing a small paper falling out. She took it up and unfurled it, reading its contents. Deliverance is nigh. She smiled to herself. At least he knew what was going on. But what was he planning? The door opened, revealing C in sleeping robes. The blonde smirked a little, regarding his wife. She had all the assets, with curves in all the right places. She was beautiful. The Hyuga's expression fell. "Naruto, please come now," she yelled in her mind. "What do you want?" she snarled. "Don't be like that, Hanabi-chan. We're now spouses, and we need to consummate this marriage." She suspected as much. He took a seat beside her on the bed, seeing that she wasn't going to try to resist. He stroked her face gently with his hand, trying to get a good reaction. He received none. He pulled her into a side hug around her shoulders and took out his own personal needle with an aphrodisiac and injected her with another dosage. She felt a prick and knew what was coming, but she was resolute in using her Hyuga rigidness to resist it. She started to fail. Outside, on the Raikage's tower, an imposing figure was crouched in a squat on the balls of his feet on a narrow ledge. His blonde hair fanned to the sides as the wind blew. He saw everything going on below, noticing how the people went about their daily lives, not knowing about the corrupted ideals of their leader. He could destroy the village with only one technique, teach them a lesson. Don't mess with Konohagakure. It was so simple. But for the sake of one person, the only friend he had from this place loved the village, and who fought by his side. Killer B, who was now deceased. For his sake, he will not destroy the village. But he will destroy the places associated with the crime of kidnapping her. While he tried to keep a business feel to it, the whole affair sparked anger within him. Not enough to spark Kyuubi's chakra. The demon's soul was supposedly gone, leaving him with its chakra. It was all pure and regenerative. Didn't really change the fact that he couldn't get angry and destroy landscapes with his own techniques. Hanabi felt like she had the potential to be a great friend for him, a chance to start anew. He really liked her personality. It was like his from nowadays and back then mixed together. The seal on the back of his wrist started heating up. He moved up the sleeve to look at it, and saw the number on it start to climb, turning red as they did, starting out blue at first, and rising through the color spectrum. He smiled. A very grim smile. It was a harbinger. Time to get to work. Naruto placed the bowl back down onto the counter with a sigh. He burped with his mouth closed to suppress the sound and exhaled it, making for good table manners. His female companion alongside him did the exact same thing. They only had one bowl each. Naruto had really cut back on eating ramen in copious amounts. He was enjoying his little ramen break with her. It was also his third break this week with her. This was only Tuesday. He could not deny that she was the best companion a guy like him could have. She was his stabilizer, his alternate polarity, all he could hope to be but could not. The same went for her. When he was around her, the fortress that locked inside his emotions was slowly torn down, all his pent-up and bottled-up feelings were released, and he could finally be the person everyone liked. The Uzumaki loved the idea of perfect peace, holder of the infallible will, the child of prophecy. His remaining friends were overjoyed. And they allowed that to one person, the one person whom they least expected to pull him from that dark place known as loneliness. Hanabi Hyuga. Said woman was seated on Naruto's right, conversing with Aim. Aim as well was grateful to Hanabi for helping Naruto. When Naruto closed himself off entirely socially, even to her by not even coming to the stand, she took it really hard. She and her father practically watched the goofball grow up from a pine-sized brat to the man he was now. It was even more so when Tucci died of cancer. It took him so suddenly, he did not even suffer. It did not help much knowing that the top 3 medics were all deceased. The ramen maker didn't even have a ghost of a chance. Tsunade, Shizune and Sakura. Now he was back. These 2 customers, while not even eating half as much ramen as a younger Naruto, still kept the stand afloat. Naruto left a large tip most of the time. He did inherit the Namika's fortune after all. And she had to hire a teenager to help her out. She still looked forward to his visits, the pair being inseparable, even having meals together. This made for good teasing material. So Hanabi, when are you going to advance the relationship? Aim smirked slyly. Naruto-kun and I are just friends, Aim ni, the heiress insisted for the millionth time. Well, the thought had crossed her mind so many times, she would not cross that bridge. Not even halfway. If it were to become a more intimate relationship, let Naruto cross it all the way to her. Not that she wanted to become intimate with him, she reassured herself in her mind. Hanabi-chan and I are just friends. Naruto butted in. Best friends, nothing more, Hanabi added. Why does it feel like we are in denial? Aim smiled with her eyes closed. Well, you know what they say about marrying your best friend. Both clan heirs looked at each other and blushed heavily, while they tried to think of an indifferent-sounding response. Hey, what's all this talk about marriage? A new customer ducked into the ramen shop. Make those customers. They also spoke in unison so perfectly that it unnerved anyone who heard it the first couple times. Furai, Mizurai and Karai entered the shop, and they all grinned at Naruto cheekily. They were triplets. Konohamaru and Mugi's triplets. By some weird genetic miracle, Mugi had triplets with Konohamaru. They all had the affinity, and they each had a minor 1 to 3 more. It's in the names. They were the exact look of a young Konohamaru, but with orange hair. The only way to tell them apart was by their scarves, which were different colors. Furai wore light blue, Mizurai wore dark blue, and Keirai wore red. They had exceptional teamwork and were dubbed as the Tri-Rai. Very aptly so. They were a pain in the neck for Naruto. Hey Gramps. Who are you calling Gramps? I'm only 28 years old. Dad says to call you Gramps, but Mom says to call you Boss. Which one would you like? They asked in unison. Yeah, call me whichever. Naruto decided, hoping that they'd just leave him and Hanabi alone. Alright. Naruto and Hanabi, sitting in a tree. Kissing. First comes love, then comes marriage. Then come the baby in the baby carriage. They laughed hysterically, but the people being teased had steam pouring out of their ears. Oh, that's the last straw. Let's get him, Hanabi. The woman was in full agreement. The triplets ran out of the shop squealing in terror, with two very dangerous people running after them. All in all, a very comical situation. The triplets soon ran into a dead end. They turned rapidly to exit it and take another way, but they were cut off, the two Chazers grinning sadistically. As they were about to pummel them, the Tri-Rai smirked. Boom. Crap. Hanabi-chan, paint. Naruto screamed. Hanabi's eyes widened. She quickly created a counter. Rotation. Naruto was no slower. Shadow clone jutsu. The four clones then hugged the original on all sides. And not a second later than absolutely necessary. Bright colors exploded from the trio, being water buncheons created with paint and used with a low-level grey clone explosion. The two ninjas were covered. After the maelstrom of paint died down, they both released their respective and looked over the alleyway. It looked like a childish swirling paint art project mixed in with a Picasso. Weird. The two ninjas smiled with each other, pleased that they were able to avoid the paint when Hey Gramps Naruto and his girlfriend Hanabi. They looked up at the top of the building creating the alley. The instant they did, paint was poured all over them, covering them from head to toe. Arg. Mizurai. Furai. Keirai. I'm going to get you for this. Naruto wailed comically, shaking his fist in the air. But the children had already gone home to seek asylum with their parents, hoping they didn't sell them out. Their echoing laughter was all they heard. Although Hanabi knew that they both could have avoided the pain like ninja of their caliber normally could, they let themselves get caught. Those were the unspoken rules. But you were free to offer your own justice to any of them. She smiled. Well, it was not as funny when it happened to her, as is normally the case. She enjoyed seeing this side of him. It made him stand out to all others. His aura now seemed to be radiating pure sunshine. A truly happy phenomenon. Naruto saw her smiling. Not knowing the reason why, he smiled as well, albeit a confused one. He suddenly remembers the paint that was currently covering their bodies and grabs Hanabi, and they both disappear in a yellow flash. That same instant they find themselves in a luxurious shower in the Uzunemika's house, or more specifically, the guest shower. He teleports again, but this time on his own to find his shower. Obviously they were going to have to get the paint off before it started to dry. But more importantly, it seems that he had decoration seals all over the place, both in places that did as well as those that did not matter. Hanabi-chan. His voice sounded a bit muffled due to the quantity of walls he had to shout through. Yeah. Don't forget to wash the paint out properly this time. Remember when you accidentally missed a certain pink spot in your hair. Gah. Will you ever let me live that down? She heard only his laughter in response. She took it as a no. After half an hour of heavy showering, they stood close to one another, scrutinizing each other's hard-to-reach spots to make sure that they got all the paint out. Not as much Hanabi as Naruto because she remembered about her so she could check herself for stray paint. She checked him all over as well as herself. Yep, they were both clean. Naruto ambled off into the kitchen and spawned 2 cage buncheons. Hey, fireworks. Hanabi's lips twitched into a very small smile. Her name's translation was something of a nickname for her over the past year. While she wouldn't admit it to him, she loved hearing him say it. Yeah. What do you want for dinner? Something light. We just had ramen after all. Anything special? Surprise me. She regretted saying that almost as soon as she said it. The last time she told him that he cooked a huge amount of instant ramen. And he was a staunch believer in not letting food go to waste. It was probably because he had to scrape for scraps when he was a young orphan. At least he did cook something light. It was only some rice that was steamed to perfection. He made a mango sauce to go with some delicately fried fish and some green tea. As they ate, she couldn't help but admire his cooking skills, as well as his ability to satisfy her appetite without overshooting the requirements for her palate. He was full of surprises. Pleasant ones. After they ate, they went upstairs to sit on the roof, peering at the starlit sky. There were even a few shooting ones. They sat in each other's company, just appreciating the time they spent together. But only as friends. Very close friends. Hey Hanabi-chan. He started. Yeah, Naruto-kun. She responded using his name, but not looking at him, but rather at the night sky. I've been thinking. About what? 3 years ago. Oh. I know. It's just that air. He started to stumble over his words, but she hushed him by placing a finger on his lips. I know. I don't care. In fact, I'm almost glad you did. Really? I would have thought you would have preferred me to fight alongside the second we saw him. It's just that I saw Wei. I'm sorry. I know that it might feel like I used you. You didn't. In fact, they got what they deserved. They brought it on themselves for doing such a despicable act, and you even warned them. It's just that recently I started wondering about that time because... Flashback. Naruto smiled. A very grim smile. It was a harbinger. Time to get to work. He jumped off the ledge into a dive, a long free fall in a short distance of 150 feet to the ground. While in the air, still diving down headfirst, he created 6 clones that were in the same position as him. You all know what to do. The seal on his arm let him know that her pulse was still rising. She needs us. Go. They all nodded once and all of the Narutos disappeared in the Hiraishin. The original Naruto arrived in the room where Hanabi was located, adjacent to the bed. She was sitting in a position that was facing his point of arrival, but C was facing Hanabi from the left. Naruto had teleported into his blind spot. His own heart rate sped up in anger as he saw C about to kiss Hanabi, even though he knew that this mishap was probably the cause of the Hyuga's discomfort. They were about to have sexual intercourse, or more like rape since she didn't want this. He was caught in the middle of attempting to kiss the heiress, and this only caused the Uzunemikis to see red. But not enough for him to go ballistic. A reserved kind of anger. Boy, see. The man turned around his head sharply only for Naruto to make a first impression on his face, knocking out a tooth and loosening a few more. While he was dazed from the punch, Naruto then made a seal-less Cage Bunshin, who revealed his eyes to be the Rinnegan. Naruto ripped off C's clothes, except his underwear, took out a paper seal that said disorientation and paralysis on it, and slapped it on. He then unsealed a cardboard sign that had its words printed in a loud red color, and quickly placed it around his neck on a string. To Hanabi's eyes, his whole movement was all of his motions blurred into one action. He then grabbed the shoulders of both C and Hanabi, and disappeared in the Hiraishin. All of this happened in the space of 3 seconds. The clone placed his arms in an X position over his chest in preparation of his technique. With first set of clones. The Raikage was sitting down in his office drinking sake and a protein shake mixed together in a large tumbler. He was deliriously happy. Going by what the nurse said, Hanabi should be having twins, triplets or even quadruplets, with the fertility enhancers that she was given. And knowing C, he was sure that he could look for the babies to start coming out in 9 months. All was good. Or so he thought. 2 clones suddenly appeared in a flash behind him. I sensed their presence immediately and turned around to engage them. But to his surprise, the clones moved twice as fast as him. One clone activated his Rinnegan, and the other slapped a seal on the Raikage, then strapped a cardboard sign with loud red letters around his neck, and teleported with him again. The guard was stumped at first, but leapt towards the remaining clone to dispatch him. All of this happened in the space of a single second. The clone placed his arms in an X position over his chest in preparation of his technique. With second set of clones. They appeared in a Hiraishin flash in the church, mosque, synagogue, holy building, whatever you want to call it. I'm ignorant of how Japan's main religious system works. One grabbed the official, notary public, to the wedding and was sitting in his office counting the ryo in a fat purse that the Raikage had paid him to look the other way. While Kami might sentence him to the Shinigami's hellish realm in the afterlife, he was going to live happily until death claimed him. It may have been sooner than he thought. The clone slapped a disorientation seal on him and strapped a red worded sign on him, and flashed away with him in tow. All of this was in the space of a single second. The clone placed his arms in an X position over his chest in preparation of his technique. With third set of clones. Both clones suddenly appeared in the Lightning Daimyo's regality room. One spawned around 30 more clones that suddenly disappeared. To the Daimyo's horror, all of the strongest shinobi and samurai suddenly fell unconscious. The second Bunshin walked up to the man in a walk akin to one of great importance, but also with an edge usually found in the walking gait of stone cold killers. The Daimyo yelled in terror. Guards, anyone. Help me. Stop this man. No one came. Later, he would find out that everyone, be it man, woman and child, was unconscious in a 2-mile radius. No one's going to come. Naruto said threateningly. Now listen to me. You know me, don't you? Daimyo nodded his head vigorously. I am past the level of Madara and Obito and Pain's abilities. Did you know that? The frightened man, not trusting his voice, shook his head no so hard that it was a wonder that he didn't break his own neck in doing so. Did you know that one of my monikers was the Golden One-Man Army? Hi. I can create over 100,000 clones of myself. Did you know that? No? Naruto looked up a little towards his own forehead. In the Lightning Country and from Lightning Country, both registered and missing, there are around 20,000 ninja. For the samurai and special guards and forces, you have around 30,000. He glared back at the daimyo and continued in his even tone. Do you see where I'm going with this? The daimyo shook his head a bit more confidently, seeing that if Naruto wanted to kill him, he would have done so already. What I'm saying is, even if I were to fight by myself without help from the Leaf, I would still outclass your army. And I am SS class ninja, and all my clones would inherit my abilities. He grabbed the daimyo by his collar and hoisted him up, turning the man back into a quivering mess. Understand. Naruto released some killing intent. The amount was just short of knocking the man unconscious. The man nodded, the movement a bit handicapped given his situation. So if I hear that if even one member of the Leaf is killed, hurt, or even a single hair on their head slightly out of place, and the fault was on the part of any Kumo ninja or samurai, castle guard or even a civilian, I will personally come back and raise lightning country to the ground. His eyes shut for a second and reopened them, revealing rippled eyes. I know that you gave the go-ahead for the Raikage himself to kidnap the Hyuga heirs. Let it be known that if I am further displeased, I will burn all of your crops, mar the landscape with extensive techniques, kill every man, woman and child, torture and maim everyone in the military services. I will save you for last, slowly cutting off your limbs and leaving you a quad amputee. I will hack off what makes you a man and feed it to you. I'll cut off your eyelids and leave you to watch the sun, making your eyes roast in your skull. He spoke last in a feral beast voice. I'll remove this land from everyone's memory, kill whoever mentions its name, burn all books that have it in a passing mention. Do I make myself clear? The daimyo replied by losing control of his bells while nodding yes fervently. Hi. He bawled out in fear. Naruto dropped the man onto the ground. And if you're thinking the Raikage can stop me, my clone with only a fraction of my power was able to subdue him in a second. He's in my custody. For now, be watchful and pray. Eat and drink and be merry but be very vigilant. You know that the time will eventually come when some bumbling lightning native makes a slip up, and when they do Naruto trailed off, letting the threat hang in the air. He and the remaining clone flushed away, leaving the man who was supposedly royalty to stew in his own filth, a weeping mess. With the original Naruto, they teleported to the highest and most suitable natural ledge on one of the mountains looking down on Kumo. He arrived only to find two clones already waiting on him. Hanabi's first reaction was to be suddenly afflicted with vertigo and nearly throw up, but she managed to keep it in. She was deliriously relieved to know that she nearly went second base with the man against her will. So much so that she forgot about her earlier misgivings about Naruto not intervening sooner. She suddenly noticed that the Raikage and C were next to her. What are they doing here? She almost yelled at Naruto. She didn't even take notice of the signs and what they said. He did not take much notice of the yelling. Oh, I just need to borrow him for a minute. Don't worry. He's harmless. But I'll need you to position yourself in a certain position in a minute. But in the meantime, check it out. He snapped his fingers dramatically. Suddenly in Kumo, she saw that the house that she was in as well as the Raikage tower and office as well as the church that she was wedded in, was blown apart in some sort of explosion of a perfect transparent sphere. Nothing remained of them, but the damage was localized, nothing else was destroyed beside those three places. Naruto had used 3 Shinra Tensei in perfect sync. Her eyes widened. All of these places had something to do with her kidnapping situation. She would also find out later that the castle was destroyed, apparently by another clone. It was by the clone who threatened the daimyo, but she didn't know or ever will know about the threat. He turned to her. His gaze was a bit cold and calculating. I need you to position like so. He started to put her in a certain position, placing her in such a manner that was against her will, but she didn't really have the gall to resist. She was still frightened of his abilities, so much so to create his own destruction and capture the Raikage himself. If he was mad, she didn't dare to attempt to rub him the wrong way. He dispelled his clones everywhere, except for one of those next to him. Grab the Raikage and see. We're leaving. The clone complied. Naruto himself placed a seal on himself and the clone to make them invisible, the matrices and kanji creeping over them. He then grabbed his companion's shoulder, and they all disappeared in a yellow flash. In Konoha, the four-way intersection was bustling with activity, customers shopping, storekeepers haggling, ninjas traversing on roofs and such. It was a fairly ordinary day. Suddenly, a yellow light warped in out of nowhere. In a single second, all normalities came to an end, and all eyes turned to observe the growing development. The Raikage was the first person they took notice of. The large burly dark-skinned man with golden bangles and his cage hat hanging on his belt to the right were hard to miss. Another man with blonde hair stood next to him in his underwear. They all started to laugh at the man. They almost didn't even notice the Hyuga heirs kneeling about 4 feet in front of the man. Look at their signs. A portly civilian yelled in horror. Immediately, everyone tried to move to the front of the spectacle where the man was pointing. They all absently noted that the 3 persons weren't moving. They started to read the signs that the 2 men had and they all gasped. Raikage. Kidnapped the Hyuga heirs. C. Hired to rape and almost did. And in front of the 2 men, more specifically C, Hanabi was on her knees in a cowering stance. It was really easy to figure out what this was all about. The crowd started to grow infuriated, yelling out expletives and other insults at the 2 men. This spectacle finally garnered the attention of the Hokage, Konohamaru and the council members. But within a minute of their arrival, the offenders and victim, Naruto as well, flushed away. They did the same exercise in each of the great nations, finally ending in Kumo. In each place, the reaction was the same. Not even in Kumo was the wreckage and sea pitied. It was only out of loyalty of duty why several shinobi tried to see if they could help the wreckage. But each time they did, a barrier would become visible around the three people by which the offender was electrocuted till they fell unconscious. By the time Derry arrived, the man was pissed, despite his laid-back personality. Someone had played Kumo for a fool, and the wreckage was thoroughly embarrassed. It was an affront to their pride. He was about to try for himself when the Hyuga disappeared in a yellow flash, and a piece of paper was left on the ground where she was. Barry came as close to them as possible without inciting the barrier and peered at the note. Barrier releases in 24 hours. He didn't know which emotion to feel. Flashback end. I've been thinking about our relationship as friends. I know that our friendship started off rocky and all, you know, with you not talking to me for 6 months, but it's just that if I had beaten them up or killed them, there could have been war and all that. Naruto, we've been over this already. I forgive you and I understand. You even explained why you did it in all the nations. That way, Kumo would lose a lot of face and respect. Haven't you heard? Their economy has fallen far, even Suna has more money and resources than them now. They lost a lot of contracts and mission submissions. They're destitute. Yeah, I know. They had it coming. I planned that when I saw the wreckage the first time. I even warned him. Have I ever told you? No? Anyway, I digress. What I'm trying to say is, I was hoping that you and I could be more than friends, Ugh. I know that I may not be a starry-eyed romantic. This isn't working out right. He stumbled over his speech. Hanabi smiled. This person could kill in over 6 ways, and yet he was still lost. Especially in the ways of the heart. She had read quite a few romance novels when she was younger, so she may have had some kind of high standard for him to reach back then. Fortunately, she outgrew that nature. Or she would have shut him down the first minute. She knew that those novels were all romanticized so much so that it was next to impossible to achieve in reality. But she wondered. Was it for the best that she should enter a relationship with this man? She broke out of her assessments to look back at the man who was still trying to get his head on straight. Naruto-kun. He looked back at her. Kami, she's so beautiful. Damn, how long was I stuttering? He regarded her complexion. In the soft moonlight it seemed luminescent, her facial features likened unto a goddess herself. Everything about her was perfect. He found it hard to believe that sometimes she had insecurities about her looks. He could get lost in her lucid pulse, it drew him in, leaving him spellbound. Hanabi looked at him as well. His clean-cut features, his perfectly chiseled jawline fitted him perfectly. His skin was always the perfect tan. Even his whisker marks that made him look cute in her opinion, could also make him look feral, when the timing was right. She loved that. Even in the moonlight, she could make out the cerulean orbs that were his eyes. Somehow, she felt that he was right for her. If not for her, who would he be with? If she was not with him, who was right for her? They were the perfect specimen for each other. Both had suffered during the earlier parts of their lives, been betrayed, loved and lost, and they had been strong in the face of it all. Slowly they leaned towards each other, not even registering the action. Their minds were on autopilot. It was like instinct. Both of them completed the journey towards each other, and pressed their lips against one another's. It started as chase of course, but to them, it was amazing. Naruto however started to request permission with his tongue, begging for entry. She allowed him in, he breached the walls that were her soft lips, and started to deepen the kiss. They started to wrestle each other in a battle of tongues, no one willing to admit defeat. But at the end of it all, the experience was like an orgasmic explosion, one that would keep them smiling afterwards for a long time. They finally broke apart for air after 5 or so minutes. None of them trusted their own voices. They just smiled gently at each other, knowing what this meant. So, are we a thing now? Naruto said grinning. Naruto-kun, I believe that we are much more than that. The blonde man walked along the roadway in silent contemplation. It's been a long time since he did this last. He was by no means a brooder, although he used to be one. He had come a long way since that day she died. He has let go of all that emotional baggage, surliness and indifference. It took him 10 years to get over the first step. The burden had only increased over that time as each person died. They were all precious people, those he had sworn to protect, to die for in a blink of an eye if needs be. He no longer had that notion. Well, he did, but that rather large circle of people he would die for had been drastically reduced. He had more important responsibilities now. Very important responsibilities. He would perform his utmost best to keep them safe. He would die for them. No less was expected of him. Flashback. He was in his office at home, drawing his latest seal. It was going to be a breakthrough in Fuinjutsu, being second only to the Flying Thunder God technique. So it was no surprise that when he was interrupted by a knock at the door, he was a bit annoyed. But that never lasted more than a minute, she usually made it up to him. She was a fantastic kisser. Come in, Hanabi-chan. This is as much your home as it is mine, you know. The door opened to reveal his wife, Hanabi. She had 27 winters behind her. She was still unbelievably attractive with her unique and superb personality to boot. She was the best woman in the whole world, and if no one else thought so, she was the best woman for him. None else came close. But that's not what he was focusing on now. There were a few tears still running down her face. Naruto frowned. It couldn't have been a physical injury. It couldn't have been a mood swing. It was far too early, still in the first trimester. I wonder if it has to do with what the news carrier came to tell. He gave a mental sigh. No news is good news. Truer words have never been spoken. It's about Asuka Nichin. Naruto considered for a moment. Your surrogate sister. For years, in fact, 2 months after her kidnapping, Hanabi had taken a liking to a main branch Hyuga by the name of Asuka. Contrary to the usual clan attitude, the girl had many of the attributes that Hinata had embodied, like kindness and a bit of introversion and such. It was probably for this very reason why Hanabi loved her like a sister. She reminded her of her deceased sister, but in a good way. Hanabi nodded slowly. The news bearer just told me that she was killed. A scouting team found her 2 days ago. Naruto jumped up, causing some of his previously interrupted work to fall to the floor. Normally, he would have cared what happened to it, but this wasn't a normal time. How? He was trying to be a shoulder support right now. If she needed to release her sadness through tears, let her do it. She was still the strongest person he knew. After all, if he was the strongest shinobi and she could tell him what to do, then he was second. It was as simple as that. She was stabbed in the heart and had a punctured lung. But worst of all, her eyes were stolen. He hugged her. He didn't want her to think about it too much. If she'd dwelled on it for much longer, it might sour her disposition. He was by no means a medical expert, but he wasn't too sure what sorrowful emotions could do to a developing fetus. It's only been 6 weeks. But he had to know. Asuka was also an excellent family friend. This was the kind of person who couldn't make enemies, even if she tried. She had even offered to be a godmother to their future child. He gritted his teeth. He let a single tear flow undeterred. But only a single one. He had to be a fortress, a comforting being for Hanabi. For his wife, he had to be strong. He had to know. Where? He whispered almost inaudibly. The woman was sure that the only reason why she heard was because his mouth was 2 inches for her ear. For the love of Kami, they had better not, cause if they did. It was in Kurigakure. Naruto's muscles had started to become taut when she started at the letter K, for Kurigakure. He was sure that it could have been Kumagakure. This was right up their alley. But when she finished saying the village name, he relaxed. It was almost unnoticeable for his spouse. She believed that he thought Kumo was responsible. But she was found with the rest of her squad close to the border of Kiri and Kumo. I believe it could have been missing Nins, she said in a soft tone. Naruto's eyes snapped open from half-lidded to wide open. 1 week later, he walked softly in his bare feet through the halls. It had been a fairly good spar. She had the pregnancy as a small handicap in a sense, and a huge advantage over him in another. He had to remain purely on defense, no counters, strikebacks, parries. Nothing. Just unadulterated moving. He couldn't touch her, or even attempt to, in fear of harming his unborn son. He betted the gender with Hanabi. She bet a girl, of course. And all she had to do was throw everything she had at him. He made for good practice, what with being a moving and near-invincible target. As a result, she was all tuckered out, and he was carrying her back to their room bridal style. While he made his way there, he was greeted by several servants that had been loyal to his family name for a long time now. They were mostly orphans he was giving a second chance. He cared for them deeply, sending them to school and things like that, and they were like family to him. So it was no surprise when after he passed them he sometimes heard whispers of bad wordplay jokes about him. It was all in jest and he would laugh at the jokes, if only he wasn't the brunt of it. He went too hard in her, came the soft whisper. Naruto grinned. At least it helped to calm his nerves, pulling away his attention on things he shouldn't think about. He finally reached their room and made a clone seamlessly and wordlessly. The clone opened the door, and the original stepped inside the bedroom. The clone, having performed his function, dispersed himself. Naruto gently laid his wife down on the bed, then pulled the covers up to her neck before kissing her once on the forehead, silently wishing her sweet dreams. He then quietly left the room and made his way to his study. While in there, he kissed her forehead, silently wishing her sweet dreams. He then quietly left the room and made his way to his study. On arriving, he sat in his usual seat, placed his elbows on the table, and rested his lower jaw and chin in the palms of his hands. It had been a somewhat troublesome week. The whole time, there was some edged tension in the home. Anything that could or would remind her of Asuka would either cause Hanabi to tear up or just sat in her normally brighter playful demeanor. Not even he had had much time to grieve, only to have a little closure over her body in the morgue. It was only 2 days ago they had buried her. He had to use some veto power in the village to get to bury her on his land. He figured that it was the least he could do. No way was he going to allow her to become just another grave in the Hyuga compound. At the morgue, his anger nearly went over the edge when he saw the blindfold over where her eyes were supposed to be. The blindfold was a bit sunken where her eyes should be, letting the viewer know she was eyeless. Remembering it now, he let it boil over, knowing that he was no longer in public. His rage now let him see red, knowing that it could have been Hanabi. But what if it were her next time? She would probably resume some shinobi duties when the children were of a suitable age to look after themselves. What if he wasn't around? His future children could be born in the future. She was a clan head now, and since she had abolished most of the authority the elders had, it was alright for most Hyuga to pursue relationships outside the clan. She had to, or she and Naruto would have had to separate, being two separate clan heads. What would stop them from being targets, if not just for being his children? Even now he himself was still being targeted by Iwanin, even though Kurasuchi herself had told them not to. If they wanted to, it was their funeral. Sins of the previous generation are paid by the next one. And that was when he decided. They were too dangerous to be left to interfere with his life and future generations of his family. He had come to find peace in his life, and he was prepared to take it upon himself to murder, kill, and decimate thousands just for a few people. Very few people, but the most important to him. His Hanabi, who he loved with all of his being, and his children who were yet to be born. He had to. Besides, a promise is a promise, and a threat is only an extension of a deadly promise. He keeps his promises. The time had come for him to meditate on his mental acuity, sharpen his, prepare his seals, focus his chakra, and make his way to Kumagakure to right some wrongs. In the capital of Kumo. It had been a fairly ordinary day in the central point in the land of lightning. It was now dusk and all the average day-to-day activities had come to a close. But there was a sense of disturbance in the air. For some reason, everyone got the feeling of premonition. There were no exceptions to that rule. It had all been fine until now. Some of them shook off the feeling, assuming that all will be remedied with a good night's rest. Assumed. Shoppers now made their way home, most of them hurriedly. They were unsettled. Wives shut their kitchen windows, keeping in the smell of their cooking. They were concerned for their families. The husbands went home early, making sure all were in the home before securely locking it. They were agitated. The children ate and went to bed early. They were scared. The old people nodded their heads in understanding, their years of experience granting them knowledge. That there would be a vengeful spirit out tonight, and they took comfort knowing that they would be safe from its wrath. It would kill those who bore the brunt of its anger, and kill all those who got in its way. The daimyo got the sudden feeling. He was afraid. Everyone in his regality room felt it. It reminded them of the incident around 6 years ago when they were all knocked unconscious by an unseen force. They all got the feeling that it would be back. They just weren't sure if it would be that merciful this time. They were all scared, but they tried to hide it with stoic faces, trying to keep up a brave facade for the man in charge. The daimyo. The man who had doubled his usual guards 1 hour ago. And then tripled that of an hour ago. It would not bode well if they looked scared as well. With Naruto. The 32-year-old stood on top of a watch post tower, one of the highest structures in the capital. He had been leaking killing intent on a widespread scale. No one person was focused on, everyone felt it, albeit weak if done so. Below he could see people going home, probably to retire early. He nodded in morbid satisfaction. They were smart. He wouldn't harm them. Contrary to what he had threatened, the daimyo 6 years ago was somewhat true. Back then when he was still the heartless bastard he would have done it. Right now, he was struggling to keep himself from falling into that state. He was failing. Every time he saw Hanabi's smiling face in his mind's eye, he thought that he would only kill the person responsible for the death of who was responsible, as well as the daimyo. And every time he saw Hanabi's eyeless corpse in his mind's eye in place of Asuka, he thought he would kill all inhabitants in the land of lightning and torture the daimyo. He now remembers one of the pervy sage's sayings. He who tries to walk two paths will split himself in two. He came up with a compromise. 1. Kill the daimyo. 2. Kill the Reikage, whether he authorized the kill or not. 3. All military who tried to attack him or interfere would get a quick death. It was simple. He tapped a seal on a sash at his waist with some chakra. Instantly, a facial mask similar to the one Kakashi once wore came out. He quickly put it on and drew the hood of his clothing over his head. He was now incognito. He leapt off the tower. Performing the action gave him a feeling of deja vu, reminiscing of 6 years ago. He formed a cross-hand seal and created 6 clones who also free fell with him. Remember, no unique techniques of that will hint to my identity, he ordered. Support me when necessary. Hi. X6. 30 yards before reaching ground, they all performed simultaneously. Wind release. Great breakthrough. They used more chakra than required for the technique. A massive wind billowed below them, slowing their fall considerably, allowing them to land safely. Let's get the daimyo. The group of 7 started running towards the palace. About 30 seconds from the palace, they all took out tantos granted to them being replicas of the original. Naruto was by no means a professional but when you're the fastest man in all the elemental countries, it didn't matter. If you had sky-high skills but were still slower than your opponent, the results were simple. No matter how much you parried, countered or diverted, if you can't even see the slash of your enemies, you were going to die. And he was counting on that. The Usanemicus ran straight into the palace without missing a beat. Along the way, he met a few half-assed efforts to stop him by several members of the three branches of the military. Castle guards and soldiers, samurai, shinobi, they had somehow known in some part of their minds that they were going to die tonight, but they were honor-bound in order to try and stop him. They didn't get the preferred end result. A slash here, a swipe there. A stab here, a beheading there. It didn't make much difference. A kill was a kill to him. It was a profession. But this did not make him feel better. But with every kill, Hanabi's corpse in his mind got a little better. Every kill made her deathly pale complexion come back. Every beheading in particular made her awful grimace of death turn very slowly, so very slowly into her beautiful smile. The one he practically lived for every day. It sometimes scares him now for his present mentality. He and his clones continued to wipe out any and all resistance on his way to the daimyo's regality room. Soon, the amount of them that normally came in groups soon trickled to only coming in duos, and finally in singles. Lightning release. Electromagnetic murder. The 7 clones' merely body flickered to the sides, dodging them as they ran past him. At first the Kumo shinobi was confused as to why they let him be. 5 seconds later, everything from his mouth upwards slid off his lower jaw. He toppled in a crumpled heap, nothing more than dead man. Finally making it to his desired location, not a wrinkle or bloodstain anywhere on him, he started to walk calmly to the leader of the Land of Lightning. All the shinobi and samurai around the room leapt to intercept the man, trying to stop the man from approaching their king. But every weapon, every man was interrupted by the clones who killed all who went on the offensive. During this, he continued to stroll calmly up to the daimyo who sat confidently on the throne. It was strange seeing the man posturing like that, when his men were dying all around him, as if they were nothing more than insignificant pawns on a chessboard. He finished his journey to the throne. By now, all opposition were lying in their own blood puddles on the ground. All that time, Daimyo smirked in his smug expression. "Welcome, Usanemicus." His voice was oozing pride. "Cut the bullshit. You know why I'm here." "No. I don't know." His tone was so condescending it made Naruto want to vomit. Naruto placed his tanto in his sheath. 6 years. The leader raised a questioning eyebrow. For 6 years, no Konoha ninja were killed. And I know for a fact that no Kumo ninja were killed by Konoha forces either. We got by without deaths, each side fighting to knock each other unconscious instead of killing blows. I looked the other way because I knew it would have been extreme to wipe out an entire country if 2 from different sides had a fist fight. And yet, Daimyo's expression became surly. "You killed a Hyuga just for her eyes." The man leapt to his feet. Even though he was half a foot shorter than his oppressor, his demeanor indicated that he was trying to stare him down. "And who are you to judge? You barge into my chambers, puffing up your chest at me, as if you were a righteous person. Do you have any idea how we suffered after the stunt you pulled? We were flat out penniless, our emergency fund and our treasury was exhausted in 2 years. Families starved to death, children resorted to pickpocketing, old people shoplifting grocery stores, all expecting to get away scot-free by giving some sub-story. And all the stories are the same." Naruto knew. He knew. I was and I'm still aware. If you hadn't forgotten your creed that comes with your office, you wouldn't have kidnapped my wife all those years ago. You forced my hand. Did you expect me to look the other way, turn a blind eye to her capture? I may have some ideals, but I am not above publicly humiliating others when they have committed a serious wrong. His clones gathered in the middle of the room behind the 2 men, standing in a straight line across facing them. "Let me tell you something you didn't know. I use my political standings, my status as the 4th grade Shinobi Wars hero, and pull some strings in the other elemental nations. I got them to start dealing and trading with Lightning Country again when I learned that the country was in desperate times. People don't really forget, most people still remember the incident. How else did you think that you started to be able to protract yourselves? Did you just think that your badgering and pestering of the other daimyo finally got you the support you needed? The boycott probably would have lasted 10 to 15 years, instead of 4 to 5. Naruto explained. Daimyo widened his eyes. Now here called the sheer reluctance that practically rolled off the other daimyo at their last meeting, when he was entreating them for help. But before he could say anything, Naruto continued. "I know that I am not righteous, I have too many sins on my shoulders. I know I am not perfect, I have too many flaws. I know I am not honorable, I also deal in deceit. I am a shinobi. My profession entails that I kill for money. Nothing more, nothing less." Suddenly, a large arm and fist caught Naruto in the neck and pile-drived him into the ground, raising dust and debris in the palace. "Lariat." The Raikage smirked as he regarded his adversary in a huge human-shaped crater. "Usanemicus, you will die here today," he shouted, looking down into the hole. He could see that he was down, but not out. Not by a long shot. Naruto leapt out of the hole, determined to give him what was coming to him, rose out of the ground with a fist aimed for the Raikage's chin, akin to the exams when he squared off against Neji. The Raikage almost seemed bored. He caught the fist in his own larger one, and proceeded to clench it inside his own. He didn't get the satisfaction of hearing bones cracking in his grasp. Naruto leapt off the ground and placed both feet on his opponent's chest, and pushed off of it in a double dragon kick, making Air release his hand. Naruto backflipped in the air and landed neatly on the ball of his feet and glared. He did not expect to go versus the man now. It would have been later on his own terms, but not now when he was going to sort out the corrupted leader of Lightning Country. The Raikage noticed the glare, closed his eyes and laughed. "You humiliated me years ago." His expression grew serious. "I am going to kill you, Uzunamikaze." He shook his fist in a threatening manner and opened his eyes again forcefully. The action received Naruto's attention and drew his gaze to the man's eyes. He gasped. The Byakugan. The Raikage must have had both of the eyes implanted as his own, in an effort to boost his combat prowess. His anger climbed to the surface. For a second, he nearly lost his cool, but he kept it. He could only console himself that he would remove the eyes forcefully. He nodded to the clones and blinked his eyes forcefully at them once. They understood the silent order and shunshined off somewhere. Naruto sighed mentally. He was really looking forward to spending some time with Hanabi tonight. Looks like that would have to wait till tomorrow, he thought offhandedly. He dropped in a running man's stance and sprinted in a blur, the Raikage in a blur. "You're nothing more than a thief." The Raikage disappeared in a flicker of imagery and punched Naruto in the gut, and then back-fisted him in the jaw. "And you're nothing more than an insect of a man, much less a shinobi." Naruto flew away at the force of the impact into the opposite wall. "Gah. I don't have any unoriginal moves that are widely known. The only moves that can beat him are moves that everyone can identify with me. I could use them, seeing as that only these two will see it. They won't live to tell the tale anyway," he thought grimly. "Kill him." The daimyo raided for Cage to kill Naruto. The double clan had created 16 clones who all shunshined to cardinal points in the room. Each group of 4 created a great ball that was orbited by 3 regulars. "Kill A." The order was given. A dozen of the clones disappeared, leaving 4 clones who each leapt at the Raikage. "Planetary or Sengen." The Raikage smirked, just a second before they all collided with him at the focal point. All of the attacking spiraling spheres of chakra grinded against each other, resulting in a plume of a massive chakra explosion. The remaining 2 people shielded their eyes from the flying dust that ensued, and tried to stare through the cracks between their fingers to see what the end result was. For a fleeting moment, Naruto wished he had this so he could see through the dust. He envisioned his wife again, but this time he wondered if she X-rayed his clothes. Sometimes he would catch her with her for no good reason, and she was a bit perverted. He chuckled despite the situation he was in. "And what are you smiling about?" I stood behind him in his lightning armor. Naruto didn't even have time to react before the man punched him 6 times in the gut so fast it felt like one. Naruto started to fly backwards from the force, but A reappeared behind him and clenched his hands together, and performed a double axe handle to the Uzunamikaze's head, straight into the ground. "Elijah bomb." The man poured an insane amount of chakra into the attack, so much so that if someone were to die from the attack, that was the least it could have done to them. The explosion rocked the capital, and the palace's foundation finally gave way, making the whole thing collapse. It grabbed the daimyo and sped out of the falling rubble. They made it outside, just in time to see that the building cave in on itself. The man laughed in celebration of their adversary's death. While the daimyo was sorry about the palace, he took comfort knowing that it would be the Uzunamikaze's tomb. "Stop laughing. He's still alive. I can see his chakra signature." "What?" The Raikage pointed at his eye, still activated. "I see all, with the all-seeing eye. He cannot hide from me." "Then why are you so happy? You should be killing him." The daimyo retorted angrily. He was not going to last long if the Uzunamikaze decided to switch to him mid-battle. While he was confident that the strongest cage alive in his opinion could stop him and end him, it still couldn't guarantee his own safety. He himself almost died as collateral damage in the last attack from the Raikage himself. The big man did not answer. He instead squinted his eyes and frowned. The daimyo noticed and asked what the matter was. "I can't see him anymore." 7 Narutos strolled out of the dust fog sight, all of them with orange eye shadow and horizontal pupils. Daimyo gasped. "He's right there. 7 of him. And their eyes look like Frog's eyes." He immediately ran to a large slab of concrete and cowered behind it. Naruto felt the need to laugh. "Like Toad's eyes. This is my Sage Mode." A's eyes widened. "Sage Mode. I can sense his chakra levels increase exponentially. But, I can't see his chakra. In fact, I can't see him at all. Why can't I see you?" he yelled in frustration. "I prepared myself for this eventuality. In the event I had to go against the person who stole Asuka's eyes, I would use a seal that I recently created to stop them from seeing my chakra. Since you can't see my chakra, which is all the sees, you can't see me." And since the eyes you stole permanently activated, Naruto disappeared in a blink and gave an almighty punch to the Raikage's jaw, shattering it. You're blind to me. The dark-skinned man now realized the dire situation he was in. He couldn't see him with his eyes. He couldn't see him without eyes. He couldn't ask the daimyo to get involved because his eyes weren't trained to follow someone as fast as Naruto. Even if he did, it would have been a severe handicap, not to mention that he could spam clones almost indefinitely. This was a battle. But he could not win. All of the 7 Narutos disappeared in a burst of speed, and they all started using taijutsu and started punching, kicking and using force on the man, knocking him to each other, almost resembling a game of pinball. In little to no time at all, the man was a bloody mess, and every clone was smeared with his blood on their bludgeoning fists and feet. The man pleaded and begged for mercy. He received none. Naruto continued to beat him within an inch of his life. Almost all of his bones were cracked, and his vitals kept intact. He wanted to keep him alive for as long as possible, when he didn't even deserve to even live at all. Finally, he grew tired of killing him slowly and let the clones stop hitting him, letting the man finally lose speed that had kept him airborne and descended to the ground in a heap. His momentum was still enough to make him slide a little further, just short of reaching Naruto's position. The blonde crouched down and looked at the man smirking. Haha. Now you know what broken glass feels like. The dark-skinned man did not attempt an answer. Naruto reached down and pulled out the man's eyes right out of his head and sealed it away. The air was filled with the A's throaty scream, which was heard only by those already present. Jaw broken. The daimyo was horrified at the scene. Never before seeing something of this nature, the man retched to one side. Naruto created a bunch and imbued with fire release chakra who proceeded to grab the man and make him stand up forcefully. All the Sage Mode clones and Naruto himself came closer, all at an equal distance to the Raikage in the middle, and stood sideways to the man. All of them had their right arms across their chests as if in a pledge. So this is how it ends. Any last words? I recognized what he was doing and panicked. The Raikage made some gurgling sounds that sounded a bit like "spare me please," but Naruto didn't care. For the safety of my future children, Naruto began. The fire clone who still held up Ace started igniting his flesh, slowly burning the man alive. And for those who you may prey on in the future, all the clones closed their eyes. A screech gutturally. I sentence you to death. There was a brief pause in which all went quiet, save for the burning of A's flesh. Naruto's eyes exploded open, revealing them. All of the clones did so as well. All Narutos flung their arms forward in the direction of the lightning shadow, and the fire bunshin who dispelled. In the short second in which Ace stood, all of them yelled, Shinra Tensei. The 7 localized and concentrated all met each other with A in the middle. The man was suddenly compressed from 7 directions and exploded from the action in a deluge of crimson. To keep injury from himself, Naruto kept his Shinra up for another second and slightly increased its power and range, finally disposing of his clones and keeping the scarlet shower off of himself. In the aftermath, Naruto sighed. It was over. There was the sound of someone vomiting. Perhaps not quite over yet. Uzunamika saw the daimyo hurling whatever was left in his stomach at the gruesome death. His eyes widened when he saw Naruto focus his attention on him. The man jumped up and started running away, screaming for help. At first, Naruto had considered giving the man a quick death, but seeing that the man was far from humble, he was going to do what he had threatened him the first time. With that thought, he started to walk after the screaming man. Flashback over. He shook his head in head, trying to regain his focus and stop thinking about 14 years ago. He compassed himself and went on his guard again. He was almost there, but for a ninja, those who kept their guard lived the longest. He walked on for another 100 meters, and made a right turn onto a path that was little better than a foot-beaten track. He knew he was almost there. There was a long row of trees which he walked between with a sigh of relief. There was a fairly large clearing that was bordered on one side by a river with a waterfall and on the other by a variety of fruit trees. He almost shed a tear. He had it all to himself. Tusan. He closed his eyes and smiled. Almost all, anyway. 28-year-old brunette girls flew into his stomach, tackling him to the ground. Tusan. You made it. The man grinned. Of course I did. Nothing could keep me away from you two. You're my favorite girl. Someone cleared their throat audibly. Naruto chuckled nervously, noticing his wife's shadow casting over him, giving one the impression that she was angry. Besides your Ka-chan, of course. He grinned sheepishly and got up with his 2 daughters hanging onto him, as if he were a tree. Hanabi's eyes softened and she leaned him and kissed him, making him go weak in the knees. You're forgiven. Naruto shuddered in the after-pleasure, almost making him collapse. How does she do that without even trying? You're amazing, beautiful, stunning and wonderful. You know that no one can take your place. The beautiful woman gave a coy smirk and tried to hug him in a welcome. But the darned kids kept getting in the way. Passion, Kasai, Ka-chan and I need some privacy. Naruto said in a playful voice with a slight warning undertone. The girls showed their tongues in a taunt, squealed and ran away. Naruto dropped himself onto his bottom in the soft grass. A second later Hanabi plopped himself in his lap with legs to one side. I thought you were going to make it. I was busy with work. Don't you use your clones to do that for you? How do you know that I'm not a clone? He smirked. She punched him playfully on one shoulder. I know that you can't resist me. You wouldn't send a clone to do something you would want to do. He raised an eyebrow. Want to do it. She blushed a little at her own wording. I meant it in every sense of the word. Now it was his turn to blush. For the love of Kami, he couldn't even get his sentences out right. She smiled gently and tried to kiss him again. But before she finished closing the distance, a bright yellow flash came into being. When it disappeared, one could see that the newcomer had his head between Hanabi's and Naruto's, making the woman kiss his cheek. Naruto's eyes widened. Ah, Sing. You stole my kiss. The Naruto look-alike teleported away, but not before having a fit of laughter. Sing really takes after his father, doesn't he? Naruto stopped his agitation. Hi. Rashi does indeed. He can spam that technique even more than his grandfather. I never met him though. He said that he loves all of us. One of these days we're going to find a way for us to enter your mindscape so we can all meet your parents. For some reason, he and Ka-chan never left my mind. Perhaps it has something to do with the Chibi Fox still in my mindscape. In any case, let's have that picnic. I'm starving. Good thing that there's enough of me to satisfy you. Naruto started sputtering again. The end. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.